Guys, welcome to Real Classic Film Reviews and welcome to a classic war movie review of 1967's The Dirty Dozen, starring Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, Donald Sutherland and a host of others. Directed by Robert Aldrich, this is one of the most iconic and influential World War II films ever made. The tale of a no-nonsense US Army major who's given the unenviable job of shaping 12 convicted soldiers into a tactical unit capable of carrying out a covert mission to assassinate a chateau full of Nazi top brass. Now, with its gritty realism and violence and morally ambiguous characters, this is one of the most famous and infamous war movies, and a film that helped redefine the men on a mission subgenre, influencing countless movies since. Lots of cool stuff to talk about with this one, so let's take a look.
I don't mean to appear unduly cautious, but if my personal survival is going to depend upon the performance of 12 deadheads, it might be helpful to know exactly what I have to train them for.
Now, that's a very good question, Major.
So the 1960s brought a whole slew of great war movies. The Great Escape, The Longest Day, Where Eagles Dare, The Guns of the Navarone, and of course, this beauty, The Dirty Dozen, a movie set in the months leading up to D-Day. Now, it follows Major John Reisman, played by Lee Marvin, who's a tough-as-nails US Army officer with a troubled record and basically a disdain for military bureaucracy. Now, Reisman is assigned an unusual and secretive mission to train a dozen military prisoners, most of them murderers, rapists and other hardened criminals, for a suicide mission behind enemy lines. Now, the goal is to assassinate a gathering of high-ranking Nazi officers in a fortified French chateau, thereby disrupting the German command before the Normandy invasion.
So the idea is simply that our men are dropped by parachute, they enter the chateau, and they kill as many senior officers as is possible in the time available.
And the men, known only by their numbers, are promised a clear record if they survive. Now, among this more than colourful cast of characters are violent and unpredictable figures, like Waldislaw, played by Charles Bronson, a good soldier with authority issues, Victor Franco, played by John Cassavetes, a street thug, basically, with an attitude, Maggot, played by Telly Savalas, basically a racist religious fanatic, an assaulter of women, and a host of others. Now, in a kind of Full Metal Jacket-esque structure, what follows is a lengthy but amusing training montage taking up one half of the movie, followed by a daring and violent assault on the Nazi stronghold. Now, what was unique about The Dirty Dozen is that unlike most earlier World War II films that often portrayed soldiers as valiant patriots fighting the bad guys, fighting for justice, The Dirty Dozen takes a bunch of guys who are not heroes in the traditional sense. They're essentially criminals given a last chance to both survive hard labour or a hanging and reclaim some shred of military honour. Now, of course, the Army's willingness to use and abuse these men for a suicide mission is basically the movie's main theme, that even in war, you use any tools at your disposal to get the job done. Now, of course, the cynicism running through The Dirty Dozen and its anti-authoritarian tone reflected the attitudes of 1960s America. This movie was released during the height of the Vietnam War and amid growing disillusionment with government, the year that race riots were constant, when Muhammad Ali was refusing military service, and that spirit of rebellion runs right through the movie. Even with Lee Marvin's Major John Reisman, he's constantly clashing with his superiors, including Ernest Borgnine's General Warden and George Kennedy's Major. Told you this was a stat cast. Now, Lee Marvin's a favourite actor of mine, and as usual, he anchors this movie with that old school man's man commanding presence.
Sergeant Barron!
Sir!
Get some special help and get those weapons!
Yes, sir!
Marvin was a real-life World War II veteran and thus brings authenticity and grit to the role of Reisman. His performance strikes that perfect balance between cynicism and compassion, particularly as he begins to respect and even empathise with the criminals under his command, realising that they're as brave and fearless as any soldier. Now, the cast is too sizable to go through from head to toe, but as well as the guys that I've mentioned, shout out to Cleveland Browns running back Jim Brown in, I think, his second major film role here. Donald Sutherland, the slow-witted Private Plinky, a role he would kind of semi-echo in 1970s Kelly's Heroes. And elsewhere, look out for Robert Ryan, Ralph Meeker, Clint Walker and Robert Webber, and there's still more. Now, despite the ensemble cast, the film still manages to give each one of these characters some distinct personality traits, even if some of them are more caricature than character. Telly Savalas, creepy. Sutherland, he's a twit. Clint Walker is a brute, etc. Director Robert Aldrich was no stranger to violent, provocative movies. Kiss Me Deadly, Attack, 10 Seconds to Hell, and he brings his unique vision to The Dirty Dozen. Now, Aldrich was great at balancing macho bravado and action sequences with quieter moments of tension and scenes of camaraderie between the guys. There's no denying this is a guys film. The only women here are working girls shipped in as a treat for the men before they go off on their mission, or the Nazi consorts at the doomed chateau, destined to be on the wrong end of a barrel full of grenades. Now, even The Dirty Dozen's visual style is no-nonsense and practical, relying more on real locations and physical stunts. The movie was filmed in the UK, mostly in Hertfordshire, with the French chateau, solid and imposing as it looks, actually a giant set built on the old MGM Boreham Wood backlot. The final act of the film is set here, and it's an intense and drawn-out assault, masterfully choreographed, with the tension building gradually to a chaotic and bloody finale that leaves only a handful of the dozen alive. Back in the day, The Dirty Dozen was both a critical and commercial success. It was one of the highest grossing films of 1967 and earned 4 Academy Award nominations, winning for Best Sound Effects, I think. Now, as I mentioned, it's since inspired countless imitators and spiritual successors, from Enzo G. Castellari's 1978 film The Inglourious Basterds to Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds from 2009. The concept of the motley crew of anti-heroes assembled for a suicide mission has become a staple in action and war films and pop culture. Just look at DC's Suicide Squad. Now, what I love about films like The Dirty Dozen are the refusal to romanticise war, movies that present violence as messy and chaotic, even though I think this film offers an interesting look at themes such as redemption and loyalty and sacrifice. Now, some critics have taken issue with the film's depiction of violence and its arguably simplistic morals. Now, I did read one that suggested that the film uses the men's criminal past to excuse or justify their brutal actions during the mission, which I don't really agree with. However, I'm not 100% sure if the scene in which grenades are thrown into a basement full of unarmed German officers and their female consorts, essentially blowing them to bits or burning them to death, breaks any article of the Geneva Convention, but I do know it's entertaining as hell, and I'd hazard to guess extremely mild in comparison to some of the crazy shit the Nazis got up to between 1933 and 1945. Now, based on E.M. Nathanson's 1965 novel, The Dirty Dozen stands as a landmark in war cinema because it refused to play by the rules. It's a product of its time for sure, but still with contemporary audiences. Its title alone is synonymous with an entire subgenre of cinema. It spawned a 1985 made-for-TV sequel, The Dirty Dozen: The Next Mission, which I don't think I've ever seen, to be honest. So yeah, are some of its politics and portrayals dated today? Yeah. Is it an action-packed thrill ride or a meditation on expendability of men in wartime? It's both, and it's better for it. Go check it out.